Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, why do I feel guilty when I rest? Why does doing nothing feel like failing at life? We live in a culture that worships performance, not presence. Productivity has become our religion, and exhaustion, our badge of honor. But what if this obsession with always being on is not a sign of success, but a trauma response? Before we dive in, if you've ever questioned the grind, if you felt lost in the noise of always having to prove your worth, this video is for you. Make sure to like, comment your thoughts below, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because today, we're not just talking about hustle culture, we're exposing it for what it truly is, a spiritual crisis disguised as ambition. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What if your addiction to being productive is not your personality, but your pain trying to be useful? What if the part of you that can't stop is actually the part of you that's afraid of what it would mean to just be? We'll explore the toxic illusion that high performance brings happiness, and why thinkers like Jung, Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, Viktor Frankl, and Gabor Maté would argue the opposite. There's a wound beneath this drive. A shadow behind the screen. And until you recognize it, you will never truly be free. Stay with me, because once you see this, there's no going back. The freedom you're seeking isn't in doing more. It's in finally understanding why you can't stop. At the core of our obsession with productivity lies a quiet terror, the fear of facing ourselves. Most people don't actually want more time, they want less of the discomfort that time alone brings. We fill every moment with tasks, goals, and checklists not because we're thriving, but because we're running. Running from silence. Running from the unbearable question, who am I when I'm not performing? Carl Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow, the repressed side of the psyche, the part we don't want to see but desperately need to meet. Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But what happens when we lose that why and replace it with constant how to be more efficient, more optimized, more impressive? We begin to confuse movement with meaning. We become productive machines with starved souls. And in this chase for external validation, we slowly silence the internal voice that tells us what truly matters. We no longer work for purpose, we work to escape the anxiety of not working. This internal duality, the light that wants to shine and the shadow that whispers, "You're never enough," is what traps us in cycles of toxic high performance. We desire freedom, but feel guilty when we take it. We long for rest, but secretly believe that rest must be earned through suffering. It's a cruel paradox, the more we crave peace, the more we punish ourselves for seeking it. Schopenhauer once reflected that humans are doomed to swing between pain and boredom. When we stop suffering through effort, we're left with the unbearable weight of our own emptiness. Unconscious patterns, seated in childhood, reinforced by culture, shape our adult lives in ways we rarely question. If you grew up being praised for achievements and ignored in your stillness, it's no wonder you now chase validation through work. If your worth was tied to your usefulness, rest will feel like failure. These patterns aren't just habits, they're survival strategies. But survival is not the same as living. And unless we bring these hidden beliefs into the light, we'll keep mistaking the prison for the path. Let's stop pretending, not to the world, but to yourself. Why do you really work so much? Why does your heart race when your phone is off, when the inbox fills up, when you miss a deadline? You tell yourself it's about ambition, growth, purpose. But be honest, is it really about becoming your best self, or is it about not feeling like a failure? Dr. Gabor Maté teaches us that, what we call normal, is often just a reflection of trauma. So what if your high performance is not strength, but adaptation? What if the most praised version of you, the productive, disciplined, successful version, is just the most socially acceptable expression of your wound? Many of us have built entire lives trying to prove we're good enough, without ever asking, who told us we weren't? Carl Jung would say that voice inside is part of your shadow, the rejected self, the parts you had to hide in order to be loved. Maybe as a child, you learned that love was conditional on achievement. That rest was laziness. That play was a waste of time. So you became useful, efficient, respectable. But deep down, silence still hurts. Because, as Jung warned, what you resist, persists. You're not afraid of failure. You're afraid of the emptiness it reveals. You don't fear rest. You fear what shows up in the stillness, sadness, anger, confusion. It's easier to keep running than to stop. Easier to perform than to feel. Easier to appear strong than to admit you were never truly seen. And this is why real transformation doesn't begin with new goals, habits, or routines. It begins with a brutally honest pause. A moment of stillness where you finally look inward, stripped of masks and expectations. The problem was never out there. The problem is that you believed you had to become someone else to be worthy. Now, the question is: are you willing to lose the character you've been playing? To finally meet the soul underneath? Here's the truth that no productivity guru will tell you: you don't need to become more, you need to remember who you were before you forgot. Before the noise. Before the pressure. Before the world taught you to measure your value in output. The real turning point begins not with fixing yourself, but with finally facing yourself. Not with running harder, but with stopping long enough to hear what your soul has been whispering underneath the grind. This is where transformation begins, not in performance, but in presence. The courage to look inward, to sit with the parts of yourself you've rejected, silenced, or shamed, is the beginning of true freedom. As Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The pain you've been avoiding? That's the gate. The wound you hide? That's the doorway to wholeness. There's no shortcut, no 5-step formula to authenticity. But there is awareness. And with awareness comes responsibility. Not the kind that chains you to endless doing, but the kind that invites you to live on purpose. When you take responsibility for your inner world, your patterns, your fears, your story, you stop outsourcing your worth to external validation. You begin to build your life from the inside out, not the outside in. You may still feel the pull to perform, to prove, to perfect. That's normal. But now, there's a new voice, a quieter, wiser one, asking, what are you really running from? And more importantly, what would it feel like to stop? To rest? To trust that your being is enough, even when you're not producing anything at all. This is the sacred work of becoming whole. Of reclaiming the parts of you that were buried under expectations. Of seeing your drive not as your identity, but as a signal. A signal that it's time to come home, to a deeper truth, to your own rhythm, to the life that begins when the performance ends. Maybe the real question isn't how can I be more productive? Maybe the question is, who am I trying to become, and why do I think I'm not already enough? There's no final answer here. Just the beginning of a deeper journey, one that requires you to slow down, feel more, and question the patterns that have shaped your life until now. Today, I invite you to become a quiet observer of yourself. Watch how often you rush. Notice the panic in your chest when you're not doing something useful. Pay attention to the subtle guilt that creeps in when you rest. Behind each of these reactions is a story you've been telling yourself, often without realizing it. What happens if, just for a moment, you stop telling that story? If this message stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Like the video, leave a comment sharing how this landed for you, and send it to someone who's also caught in the noise of performance. Because the world doesn't need more perfect people, it needs more conscious ones. And most of all, take one breath today just for you. One pause without guilt. One moment where you remember, you are not your output. You are a soul, not a machine. If this content spoke to you, watch the video that's about to appear on the screen. It might be exactly what your soul needed to hear today.